Today we'll be looking into the lore of Kaeya and the mysteries surrounding him. There will be spoilers for the Genshin Impact manga and speculation on events that could happen in the future. If you're happy with that, let's get started. Kaeya Albric is the chivalry captain of the Knights of Favonius, adopted brother of Diluc and the heir of a royal clan from Khaenri'ah. The name Kaeya comes from the Tamil language meaning monsoon flower, and his surname Albric means ruler of the supernatural beings, usually referring to elves or dwarves in Germanic legends. His surname may be a reference to the character Albric from the musical drama Das Rheingold by Richard Wagner, a story of how the three Rhine daughters were tasked to guard the Rheingold, as anyone able to craft it into a ring would have the power to rule over the world. After accidentally telling Albric of the gold granting its power to only those who renounce love, Albric does so on the spot and takes the Rheingold for himself. He then goes on to enslave his people and plots to rule the world before Odin appears and takes the ring from him. In his anger, Albric curses the ring to cause its wearer anxiety and eventually be robbed of it and killed until it is returned to him. Many parallels may be made between this story and the possible history of Khaenri'ah, but we can't say much for sure until we have more information. Kaeya's charming personality and relaxed demeanor hide a cunning and perceptive individual underneath this mask, and few are able to guess his true intentions. His father entrusted him with saving Khaenri'ah through going to Mondstadt as a child and being adopted by Diluc's father, Crippus. The details of how this could be achieved are not explained to us, but it implies that Kaeya's father expects him to betray Mondstadt at some point in the future. We see in his character story. Generally speaking, Kaeya is easy to talk to and nice to have a conversation with. The only topic that you will never hear him discuss is his past. Even when the Grand Master demanded information on his background, Kaeya skirted around the issue and only gave vague answers devoid of details. One afternoon near the end of summer a decade ago, my father and I passed by the Dawn Winery. "I'll go get us some grape juice for the road," he said, but never came back. If Master Crippus hadn't taken me in, I doubt I'd have made it through the storm that night. This matter-of-fact description hides a carefully constructed lie. Kaeya has never once spoken the truth about what happened that afternoon. "This is your chance. You are our last hope." Kaeya's father squeezed his son's lean shoulders as he spoke, seemingly looking right through Kaeya to some place far beyond. On the other side of the horizon sat their distant homeland of Khaenri'ah. Kaeya would never forget the look of both hope and hatred in his father's eyes as he uttered those words. He is hinted to have been from a royal bloodline of Khaenri'ah, possibly the Eclipse dynasty that was in power at the time of its destruction, as we see in his constellation Excellent Blood and his family name, Albric. His first passive talent was originally called Heart of the Abyss, but was later changed to Glacial Heart, as it possibly gave too much away about his origins. He shares the same star-shaped pupils as Dainsleif, who is known to be from Khaenri'ah and was someone of great importance, being the now Bowkeeper. Perhaps Dainsleif was also part of the royal bloodline, or an offshoot, and this is what gives them their strange eyes and a resistance to the curse that turned the regular citizens into monsters. The shape of the pupils is reminiscent of a primogem, an item said to be beyond the mundane world and filled with the condensed hopes and dreams of universes that once were, making this bloodline at least loosely linked with the worlds beyond the spiral abyss, and if so, they would likely be ancient in origin. It could be unrelated, but in Fischl's character story, it mentions a 13,000-year-old bloodline that was a branch of the royal family of the realm of Eternal Night. Her character story is based on a book series she loves, and can be dismissed as fictional within the Genshin universe. But the realm of Eternal Night lines up quite well as a description of Khaenri'ah, a nation which was built underground. Kaeya's clothing is reminiscent of a cryo-abyss mage, and from what I can tell, the abyss mages were once human, as I suspect the Hilichurls were. We hear of the Mondstadt noble, Landric, who sent Eberhard's party to investigate Dragonspine 1000 years ago. The Hydro Abyss Mage that appears in Diluc's story quest goes by the same name, and thus may be the same noble from 1000 years ago. Perhaps he travelled to Khaenri'ah after being exiled from Mondstadt by Vanessa's rebellion, and was cursed along with the rest of the people in Khaenri'ah, not having the willpower or royal bloodline to resist transforming into a monster, though the Abyss Mages seem to have a level above the Hilichurls in intelligence, so other factors seem to come into play once people are cursed and start to transform. We see in the recent Windbloom event that Kaeya can write in the language of the Hilichurls, likely because this is actually the language of Khaenri'ah in the past, or a simplified version of it at the very least. Kaeya's eye patch could also hide something like a partial monster transformation. In a similar way, Dainsleif's arm is monstrous. Why the curse would only affect certain parts of their bodies isn't known, but perhaps it relates to momentary lapses in the willpower needed to resist it, especially if it's something that must be resisted constantly. Paimon even comments on Kaeya, possibly hinting towards this in the Traveller's voice lines. Kaeya said that people's eyes will betray them. He can tell if someone is telling the truth or not just by looking into their eyes. His constellation is named Pavo Ocellus, Pavo meaning peacock and Ocellus meaning eye in Latin. This is likely referring to the pattern of the feathers, which form what are known as eye spots. This can be seen in his name card's description. This pattern of peacock feathers resembles eyes that never shut. Can we really say that this Pavo Ocellus is missing an eye? His attitude reflects that of a peacock, but with him being from Khaenri'ah and their immersion in alchemy, the peacock could perhaps represent the iridescent stage of the magnum opus, in between the first and second stages, named Coda Pavonis, the peacock's tail. Its meaning can be taken in a few ways. If the alchemist is successful, it is a step on the path to enlightenment. However, if they are undisciplined and distracted by visions, it can lead to discord of the mind and a permanent change to their personality. Thus, it may be further evidence to the idea that Kaeya is still on the precipice of choosing a side, his birthplace, Khaenri'ah, or his adopted home of Mondstadt. Mona even suggests this in her voice lines.
Kaeya Albric. He's a Pavo Ocellus, destined for greatness and grandeur, and to hide ugly realities behind a layer of charm and elegance. He believes he has made a clean break with his past, but one day fate will catch up with him. When it does, he will have a major decision to make.
With Kaeya's ambiguous nature, such a constellation seems fitting. Though he carries out good deeds in the name of the Knights of Favonius, when he isn't drinking at the bar, he also shows cruel streaks in which he likes to watch people suffer. Once, in order to force a bandit leader into facing him directly, Kaeya triggered the Rune Guard at an ancient ruin to cut his opponent off, putting his own men at risk in the process. It's times like these when even Jean, who puts a lot of trust in Kaeya, finds herself shaking her head in disapproval. Not that this bothers Kaeya, of course. On the contrary, he actually enjoys putting people into the difficult position of making tough decisions. He takes pleasure in seeing the hesitation in his comrades' eyes in the moment just before they dive into battle with him, just as he takes pleasure in the look of fear in his enemies' eyes as they face off against him. And he smiled at the death of his adopted father, Creepus Ragnvindir, after Creepus saved a young Diluc from Ursa the Drake, as we see in his character story. By the time Kaeya had finally reached Diluc, it was all already over. The power their father had used to successfully fend off the monster backfired, taking their father's life. Both Kaeya and Diluc were shocked by what they had witnessed, losing the calm composure a knight should retain. Even someone like Master Creepus would submit to such a dangerous and evil power. Sinister thoughts flashed through Kaeya's mind, and he simply smirked. The world is truly fascinating. All while their father lay dead in a pool of his own blood. It was on that night that the two sons' paths diverged. It's hard to tell what thought caused Kaeya to smile like this, Perhaps it was a realization that the world was not as black and white as he had once thought, and that even good people can use evil powers when they are desperate to protect something precious to them. It could have given him the push he needed to not feel guilty about siding with his father and Khaenri'ah over Mondstadt. Though perhaps it showed him that his origins of being from a cursed nation did not mean that he had to be used by them for evil purposes. As usual, the answer is unclear until Kaeya has to finally face his destiny. The night of their father's death, Kaeya decided to share with Diluc the secrets he had kept to himself for so long. This would be the end of any brotherly ties they once shared and the awakening of Kaeya's vision. It was raining heavily in Mondstadt on the night that Kaeya Alberic received his vision. Earlier that day, Creepus Ragnvindr had wielded the power of a delusion, only to become its victim when it backfired. To set his father free from the unbearable agony, Diluc Ragnvindr took his life. Kaeya was Diluc's brother by adoption and was always by his side, but on this occasion, Kaeya did not partake in the final moments shared between the father and son. The torrential rain that set in on Mondstadt that night seemed to be a sign of the heavens' grief at the passing of Master Creepus. There was a side to Kaeya that he kept hidden from the world. In truth, he was an agent of Khaenri'ah, placed in Mondstadt to serve their interests. His father had abandoned him in this strange and unknown land to fulfill his mission, and it was Master Creepus and the city of Mondstadt that had welcomed him with open arms when they found him. If Khaenri'ah and Mondstadt went to war, which side should he support? To whom should he offer his assistance? His birth father, who had ruthlessly abandoned him, or his adopted father, who had loved him and raised him? For the longest time, Kaeya had agonized over these impossible questions, caught between the opposing demands of loyalty and duty, faced with an impossible choice between truth and happiness. But now, Creepus' death upset this delicate balance. He felt liberated, but also ashamed of how selfishly he was responding. As an adopted son, he should have saved Creepus, but he had arrived moments too late. As a brother, he should have shared in Diluc's grief. And yet, as their father lay dying on the ground, he had hung back behind his brother, that ancient plot running through his mind. Consumed by guilt, Kaeya knocked on Diluc's door. As the rain poured down, the shroud of secrecy was washed away. All lies were revealed. Kaeya had finally come clean. He had anticipated Diluc's anger. The brothers drew their blades, this time pointing them at each other. Kaeya felt that this was his punishment for a lifetime of lies. But as the two crossed blades, Kaeya was overcome by the sensation of great elemental power surging through him. For years, he had stayed out of the way of his brother's shadow, but now, for the first time ever, he was facing his brother as his true self. Bitterly cold and brittle elemental energy burst forth from the tip of his sword to meet Diluc's searing flames head-on. The clash of crimson fire and azure ice created a sudden swirl of wind that stunned them both. This was the grim moment at which Kaeya's vision appeared. Since that day, Kaeya and Diluc have gone their separate ways, but he never discusses it, just as he never discusses the origin of his vision, though it is a reminder of the hard-fought battle and the prize that he earned in exchange for revealing the unadulterated truth. Kaeya sees it as a stern reminder that he must live the rest of his life under the heavy burden of lies. So, what's next for Kaeya? With how things seem to be picking up pace with the Abyss Order, perhaps the future decision he'll have to make will come sooner than we anticipate. His heritage of likely being a prince of Khaenri'ah means he will no doubt be mixed up with the Abyss Order's war against Mondstadt and the rest of Teyvat. But, as always, we'll have to wait and see. And that's the video. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider leaving a like or subscribing to let me know, and if you have any thoughts on the lore, or anything else, let me know in the comments section below. Thank you especially to those of you that have already shown your support for my channel. All the love and interesting comments I've gotten from you is more than I ever expected, and I'm not sure if I'd have continued to make these videos without it. So, good luck in your wishes. If you're saving for someone, stay strong, and I hope you all have a great day.